Robert, Special Master, it's a good segue into Project Veritas. We talked about it, I don't remember when, briefly, but they're going to try to indict James O'Keefe, are they not?
Yeah, so for those that didn't see the news, there was a plea of guilty entered by two co-defendants in the Project Veritas, the Biden diary case. It's still stunning to me. I never understood how this case developed like it did, and it's even worse when you hear the facts. So the facts are that a woman rented a house that Ashley Biden had previously been in, and she left a range of stuff, including her diary, that this person found it, was probably shocked by some of what she read, which included Ashley Biden showering as a teenage girl with her father, Joe Biden, now the president of the United States, in ways she found disturbing and she herself considered part of her addiction to sex and drugs and other things. And so this individual decided to talk to other people about it, and ultimately another gentleman got involved and got it to Project Veritas. And purportedly, they accepted from somebody, though it's not crystal clear who, $40,000 for the diary. So the question was, how in the world was this a federal crime? So it's the idea is that now taking somebody's diary without their clear approval, even if you think it might be abandoned property and by law probably was, and selling it to someone else is now across state lines is now a federal crime worthy of massive investigation and prosecution. This has never happened in the history of America. Somebody find me stolen diary leads to federal criminal charge case. So this is clearly the FBI acting as the personal guard, the personal Stasi of the president of the United States to cover up the scandal and corruption he was involved in. And just like the Hunter Biden laptop, we now have confirmation this was, in fact, Ashley Biden's diary, which means that shocking information of inappropriate child molestation, child abuse conduct by the president of the United States toward his own daughter was covered up not only by the press, but covered up by the FBI, taking the lead on it and prosecuting those who are going to try to expose that criminality. So both of these people, don't have a lot of money, don't have a lot of resources, going up against the whole FBI and the Southern District of New York. Of course, they fold and capitulate and plead to whatever they're asked to plead to, which is a conspiracy to commit all these crimes. And again, the whole thing is just having a diary and giving it to someone. This is unprecedented. They're taking the Julian Assange type precedent and they're planning on applying it, because if you dig into the plea deal and you understand the nature of the plea deal, it has a high sentence exposure for people that are not experienced with the federal criminal justice process. And that they're open pleas that are based on cooperation. There's only one person they're going after. Anybody that can see this knows who they're going after. So it's clear that they have an intent to indict James O'Keefe on Julian Assange style publishing whistleblower information, using, again, a loose, weak pretext of somehow money being involved. Again, you need money for everything. So if you can say any money exchange constitutes no longer First Amendment protection, you don't have any First Amendment protection, because you have to spend money for a microphone, right? I mean, there is no First Amendment protection if money somehow magically erases it. That's what Citizens United made clear couldn't be the case constitutionally. But it's clear the Southern District of New York and the Biden FBI and the Justice Department intend, based on this plea deal, on indicting James O'Keefe, probably before even the midterm elections, to try to limit his effect to be of his political impact. This will be the second time, of course, he's been criminally targeted by a corrupt Justice Department. I still encourage him to live somewhere other than the Southern District of New York, but that's up to him. But yeah, James O'Keefe is highly likely to be indicted based on where they're going. A baseless indictment, by the way. Be absolutely clear. Baseless indictment, just as baseless as the Julian Assange indictment. This is why some of us said, Richard Grinnell was out there talking about how we need someone to clean up the swamp. Well, it won't be you, Richard, because you were the one who helped facilitate the entrapment and arrest and imprisonment of Julian Assange. So everybody know, he would drop to his knees for Romney if Romney asked him for. He just got kicked off because he was gay. It's not because he wasn't a neocon at heart. People who think this guy's legit because he did a few good things at the ODNI don't understand who Richard Grinnell is. He's a deep state shill at heart. But this is why some of us said, everybody that sat there and said nothing about the Julian Assange indictment, now it's James O'Keefe. Do they got to get to you before you finally be like, oh, golly gee, this is going too far? This is the same method, same premise, same structure, and he's at this level almost guaranteed to be indicted. But it is a baseless indictment. It's an attempt to criminalize political opposition and press opposition in America.
So two things. So on the $40,000 from the from the plea deal that these two defendants entered into, they're basically saying we were paid $40,000 for the stolen material and asked to go back and steal more, as if to suggest maybe it happened. Maybe they got the receipts. James O'Keefe says, here's $40,000. Go steal more stuff and bring it to me. Moles. As if that happened. Maybe it did. But the question is this.
There's no way it did. And by the way they're characterizing the evidence, it clearly they know it didn't. What they're going to say is they had these documents. They had them legitimately. The documents were abandoned. And when they had massive threats by the FBI and the Southern District of New York, they're willing to plea and say anything. But it's clear their real goal is to one, their primary goal was to take this, not allow to intimidate people. If you expose the crimes of the politically protected, then you will be, that's what really Trump was doing. He was documenting the crimes of the deep state operatives themselves. Then you will be targeted by this political police force, which the FBI has always been. It's just more overt and partisan than it's been in the past. You know, J. Edgar Hoover had a different set of political targets, but it was always a political police force. We're just seeing it now more glaringly because it's so one-sided and partisan in ways it didn't used to be. It used to be political, just targeting dissidents. Now it's charging anybody connected that exposes any degree of corruption, whether it's the Clinton corruption, whether it's the Obama corruption, whether it's the Biden administration corruption.
Now, I want to pull this up because I also want to steelman this. Found not stolen. Let's just hypothetically say it was stolen by the two defendants.
Well, you'd have to have a couple of things. One is the problem is were they lawfully entitled to be in the place they were? Yes. So then the only question is, were they lawfully entitled to take that diary? The diary was not part of the house. It wasn't furnishings that the lady had rented. And it was abandoned and left behind. Typically, that's abandoned property by law. The state, by the way, takes these things all the time. They take all kinds of things under the definition of abandoned property. But even if they weren't abandoned property, look at the logic of this. This is the same as Ellsberg. Did Ellsberg have legal authority to take the Pentagon Papers? No, he didn't. By that definition, Ellsberg stole the Pentagon Papers from the Pentagon, and thus the New York Times should have been criminally prosecuted for publishing it.
Well, so that's the distinction. And it's the same law in Quebec, like property of minimal value that's abandoned. You don't even have to look for the owner. But let's just steelman it. It was stolen by the two defendants who pleaded guilty. Robert, unless I'm mistaken on the law, even if they stole it, so long as they stole it with no aid, assistance, abetment, or incitement from a journalist, the journalist can publish it with impunity. Is that not?
Let's contrast it to two recent examples. The New York Times published Trump's stolen tax records that they knew were stolen and arguably incited it. Is the Southern District of New York investigating them? Not only that, this week, Politico published stolen tax records of donors to Nikki Haley's campaign, and the media is celebrating it. I mean, this is how openly partisan it is. So it's completely okay to publish so-called stolen or unauthorized access to data if you're on the right political side. Then you're rewarded for it. You're encouraged. You're incentivized. They really do incitement and aiding and abetting. But if you do it for the opponent, then you go to prison. I mean, it's so overtly partisan. So nobody can look at these two examples and say that we don't have selective prosecution going on. And so but from a First Amendment perspective, historically, you have to be really culpable. And I've always said that that's a problematic standard, that unless you stole it, I don't think you should be if it's a matter of public interest, then you should be able to publish it and print it without being prosecuted for a crime, regardless of how you came about it, in my view, unless you yourself stole it. We're in on the stealing of it, so forth. And so, by the way, this looks like it may have been also part of a trap at some point.
Yeah. And
O'Keefe figured it out, and that's why he gave it back and didn't publish it, as he figured out something's going on here that's AWOL. I'm going to call the lawyer up and say, hey, do you want it back? He doesn't. Okay, I'll give it to the FBI. But I'm not going to actually publish it myself. But now note that didn't protect him. Just like with Trump, if Trump's lawyers had said, screw you to the National Archives, these are his documents, personal declassified documents, you're not entitled to them, we'll negotiate a presidential library down the road, then they wouldn't have had any grounds to try to do the raid. Trump's constant cooperation was constantly used against him. At some point, maybe he'll figure this out. This is why some of us, this is why hiring former federal prosecutors, which is who all of his inside lawyers are. And I'm not talking about the lawyers that are on TV. Those are TV lawyers for him. So the lawyers you're seeing on TV are not the lawyers handling his actual case. They're just his PR lawyers. He's got some of the same people Steve Bannon hired. How well did that work out for you, Steve? Did that end up being a good defense? So, I mean, the tendency of people targeted by political actors or in political cases hiring federal prosecutors has been a constant disaster and debacle throughout the Trump tenure. Ask General Flynn. And yet they keep making the mistake again and again and again and again. It's why they get where they're at. But the First Amendment grounds, to me, should be clear. That's why that was the problem with once they said, well, Assange didn't do anything illegal himself directly, but Assange incited someone to give him helped someone get access to these documents, and magically that erased publishing privileges, that erased First Amendment protections, meant they were going to keep doing this, and it would always be selectively used. And that's what we're seeing and witnessing in live time.
Now, it seems that Snake Plissken was probably being facetious when he said they didn't steal them, they found the documents. Steelmanning it for the purposes of making it the strongest argument possible, assuming the two defendants stole it. In order to get James O'Keefe on the hook, he would have had to actively participate in the scheme to steal. If it were stolen, even if it were stolen by the two defendants and then given to a journalist, they could publish it.
Unheard of as federal criminal prosecution. It's just, I mean, every journalist encourages people to get them to whatever documents they can, knowing that most whistleblower documents are unauthorized to be disclosed. So by this definition, every journalist who ever has published anything that was unauthorized to be disclosed can now go to federal prison. I mean, that's what people are not realizing. They're just obliterating this protection.
And then
politicized reasons.
Material facts as well. James O'Keefe and Project Veritas never published it. They seem to have gotten wise early on, tried to give it back.
They are the ones who ever paid it. It's also there's no evidence to know that he believed he was part of stealing anything. And it's not clear to me it actually was stolen. And again, this has never been prosecuted as a federal crime before, ever. Your diary? Somebody else has your diary?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't distinguish a diary from any stolen property, but the issue is it's a stolen document, and the Trump tax returns coming from Mary Trump,
which are much more protected, by the way. And she have much higher levels of protection than an abandoned diary.
And she admitted going into the law offices and stealing it. But no. So,
and I'm sure there were people there encouraging her to get documents and information. That's what they're trying to do. They're saying if you do anything to encourage or incite someone to get documents and information, that they can later say that their manner and means in which they obtained those documents was not legally authorized, that all then becomes stolen property. Stolen property of the government, stolen property of another individual, boom, federal crime, jail for 20 years. I mean, that's why this would shut down investigative reporting completely. People are not filtering through the full legal consequences of what they're doing in this case.
Okay, I think we're good on this. We'll see where it goes. Let's just assume James O'Keefe does get indicted, Robert. It's not as though he's going to be held in jail like the Jan 6 defendants.
Well, it'll be in the Southern District of New York, so all bets are off. You never know. I mean, presumably, correct. I mean, there'd be no grounds for denial of bail. There's no grounds to bring a prosecution here. He committed no crime. All he did is commit a constitutionally protected activity that has become a crime under the Biden administration. But you'd have the judicial pool of the Southern District of New York, the jury pool of the Southern District of New York. All bets are off when it comes to those people.